How did they fall for that? The weird psychology of getting scammed. Welcome to Seriously Sus, the podcast exposing shadiness with a side eye. With your hosts, Nanette and Miranda. We dig into crime trends, internet chaos, and cultural nonsense that make you stop and go, wait, what? So get your side eye ready because today we're looking at how smart people can lose their common sense and fall for a scam.
Okay, I want to start with a number. 11
11 what?
hours.
Oh, no.
Yeah, 11 hours on the phone with a scammer.
No, I don't even like being on the phone for like 11 minutes, if I'm being honest with you right now.
Right? Same. If somebody calls me and I don't recognize the number, I'm already annoyed before I even say hello. But this woman stayed on the phone with a scammer for more than 11 hours because they convinced her that her social security number had been compromised, that there was a warrant for her arrest, and that she somehow was involved in a criminal investigation.
Honestly, you could have my social security number after 11 hours.
Oh, yeah, right?
11 hours is like such a long time. I'm honestly impressed by the commitment.
Yeah, I keep thinking, what could you possibly have left to discuss after hour 3? I mean, at some point, aren't you both just sitting there in silence?
So, let me guess. Still under investigation?
Yep.
Cool.
But the really important part is that the scammer just didn't tell her a story and hoped she believed it. He kept her inside the story. They created the emergency, they controlled the information, and they told her not to tell anyone. And they kept her engaged for hours.
Okay, so that's actually like a really important distinction you're making because when we hear about like the scams, our first reaction is normally, how could somebody possibly believe that?
Right?
We imagine that the victim just heard something completely ridiculous and was like, that sounds good. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that's what I want to get away from in this episode. Because if the explanation is simply that some people are gullible, then great, problem solved. We're all safe because obviously we're not gullible.
Famous last words.
Exactly. Because the uncomfortable truth is that scams don't necessarily work by making you believe something absurd. They work by getting you to make the next decision, and the next one, and then the next one. And by that time you look up and realize you made a completely insane decision, it might not feel insane anymore.
That's probably why I've been so safe. Can't make a decision.
Right?
Anyway, so that's usually how we get from like, my computer has a virus to, I purchased gold for a stranger. Yeah, actual gold bars.
Actual gold bars. Can't wait to hear that one. My side eye is ready.
Man, I'm stretching my eyebrows getting ready for this side eye.
Ready for some exercise there.
Getting them ready.
Welcome back to Seriously Sus, the podcast where we look at strange things humans do and try to figure out why we do them. I'm Nanette.
And I'm Miranda. Today, we're talking about scams.
But before anybody says, didn't you already do an episode about scams?
I mean, we did, but the scam economy was about the ecosystem around scams, like the fake gurus and all that jazz, the online hustles, courses. Oh, passive income.
Yes.
Yes, love the passive income promises. Work from home. The people selling you a lifestyle and yet somehow requiring your credit card information in order to do it.
This one is much more interested in the person on the other end of the transaction. Specifically, the person who makes the decision that, from the outside, looks completely irrational.
Because, I mean, that's the thing about scams. We love to think there's a certain type of person who falls for them. Somebody who's naive and somebody who's not paying attention. Somebody who isn't very sophisticated.
Yeah. Somebody who would look at an email saying, "Dear valued customer, you won $7 million," and go, "Well, this is obviously my lucky day."
That's it. I fucking quit my job.
Right? I'm out.
And right when we get to feel like very secure, because I mean, obviously we would never fall for anything that's stupid, right?
Right.
I mean, I would at least ask which bank.
I don't think either of us would answer the phone in the first place. Unknown caller? No.
Ew. Voicemail.
Right? But the real problem is real scams are often much more psychologically sophisticated than that. They take things that are completely normal, fear, trust, love, urgency, hope, and the desire to protect your family with the desire to fix a mistake. And they usually use those things against you.
Dicks.
Right?
And sometimes, like, the person isn't even being asked to believe something particularly strange, you know? Like, sometimes they're just being asked to, like, solve a little problem.
And that's the part I think is fascinating. The scammer says, here's the problem, here's what you need to do. And suddenly, you're not evaluating whether the person is trustworthy. You're trying to solve the problem they just handed you.
So maybe the better question isn't like, why did they believe the scam? It's like, how did the scammer get them into like a situation where believing it felt like this is the most reasonable thing to do?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to figure out.
This didn't start out crazy. I think one reason scams are so easy to judge from the outside is that we see like the whole thing at once. We know the ending. We know it was a scam. We know the person on the phone was lying. We know the money isn't coming back. So when we look backward, every earlier decision, like it suddenly seems so effing ridiculous. But that's not how the person experienced it in real time.
Right. They experienced it one decision at a time. And that's important because a lot of scams start with something that is entirely plausible. Your bank account really could have suspicious activity.
Oh, happened to me lots of times.
Yep. Your computer could really have a problem. Your package could really be delayed. And a family member really could get into trouble. Not that we know anything about like that.
No, never.
So someone really could contact you saying they're from an institution you recognize. And none of those things are inherently absurd.
The absurdity, it comes later.
Absolutely. And by then, you've already accepted the premise that you're dealing with a real problem. That's where the scammer has the enormous advantage. Because once you've accepted something bad is happening, they're no longer trying to convince you that the problem exists. They're just telling you what to do about it.
And if you're scared enough, you're probably not sitting here thinking, let's pause and independently verify the identity of the person who's currently terrifying me. You're thinking, okay, what do I do? How do I make this go away?
Right. And that's where the urgency becomes so powerful. If someone tells you your account is compromised, but don't worry, we'll help you fix it, you might listen. If they say your account is compromised, you have 10 minutes, and if you don't do exactly what I tell you, you're going to lose everything. And now your brain is operating in a completely different environment.
And 10 minutes is apparently enough time for your brain to become a hostage negotiator.
Pretty much.
Joke's on you guys, I don't have anything.
Right.
All right, so there are studies showing that when people have less time to evaluate potentially fraudulent messages, they're more likely to make mistakes, which makes perfect sense. We like to think of good judgment as like a personality trait, but it's also a process. You need time to compare information, question assumptions, look for inconsistencies, and verify what somebody's telling you.
And the scammer doesn't want you to do any of that.
No, they want you in the act now, you know? I mean, that's a red flag. It's a red flag, guys.
Yeah, if somebody tells you that something is so urgent, you can't take 5 minutes to verify it, that urgency is itself information. And honestly, yep, that's one of the simplest things we can take away from the whole episode. You don't necessarily need to become better at detecting lies. Sometimes you just need to refuse to make a decision on somebody else's timeline.
Which is really hard when you're like scared shitless.
Yeah, very.
So, and that's why we need to be really careful about how we talk about the people who get scammed because, I mean, if you've ever like been in that particular emotional state, it's very easy to say, I would never do that.
Maybe you wouldn't. But the relevant question is, what would you do if you were scared, rushed, isolated, emotionally attached, or convinced you were about to lose something very important?
Panic? No.
Yeah.
No. Yes, that's probably it. I mean, it's a really a much less comfortable question though, and people don't like their own answers half the time.
Right? So now let's take that idea and put it into a case that sounds completely insane when you hear the end result.
Fools are my favorite.
A woman in California was targeted by scammers who initially convinced her that her computer had been hacked.
Which, again, it's plausible.
And then the scammers started impersonating other people, They posed as people from her bank. They posed as government officials. They built this entire story around the idea that her financial information was compromised and that her money needed to be protected.
And she believed she was protecting it. That's important. She wasn't thinking, I'm giving my money to criminals. She was thinking, I'm following instructions to keep my money safe.
Which is a completely different mental picture.
It is. And eventually they convinced her to buy gold. Gold bars, to be exact.
Over about 2 months, she transferred approximately $1.335 million in gold purchases.
Is that right? Is that right? Did you?
Yep. I know. I have so many questions.
I need to stop you right there.
Right?
All right, because this is one of those stories where the number gets so large that your brain, like, it stops processing it.
Right?
It's $1.35 million.
In gold.
Just stacking them up,
Right?
sitting on them.
Like, I don't even know where you go to buy gold bars. And I certainly
Haven't
don't
you
have-
seen the infomercials at like 2 a.m. back in the day?
I don't know about you, but I certainly don't have a bank account that's anywhere near $1 million. Well, I'm lucky if it has 1,000 some days.
One gold chip, please.
Right?
Right. You would think someone with that much money has some sort of finance person who somewhere along the way would have asked at least one question about it, right?
Right? Like, is it drugs? Is it, what you doing?
Right? Nope. She did her thing and handed the gold over to people who she believed were helping secure it.
Again, we're not talking about somebody who put $1,000 into
Oh yeah, one of those sketchy ass investments.
sketchy investments. We're talking about a person physically acquiring gold bars and then handing them to strangers.
We're gonna have to look up how you do that, like where one
Right?
acquires gold
Yeah.
bars.
And where is this exchange taking place?
Right? Under a bridge somewhere in a
Right.
parking garage, the guy's pulling up. And the scammers, so they asked for another $100,000 because, of course,
And at some point, those red flags must have been visible from space.
right? And at this point, the red flags have formed a whole ass marching band.
Complete with a halftime show.
Ooh, and majorettes.
Hey, I was a majorette, not a 12 fire. Well, actually, I did that way back then, too.
The tracks.
Yeah.
Mhm. So many red flags.
Exactly. But this is where I think the story becomes much more interesting than the obvious reaction. Because if we take the final action, I bought $1.335 million in gold and gave it to strangers, it puts it in isolation. It sounds insane.
It does. It does sound insane. But go backwards. The computer was supposedly compromised. The bank was supposedly involved. The government was supposedly involved. And there was supposedly an urgent threat to her money.
And now somebody who appears to have authority is telling you the solution is to move your assets somewhere safe. Suddenly, the gold doesn't feel like the first decision. It feels like the next decision.
And that's the trick. The scammer has changed the question from, should I trust this person, to how do I protect my money?
And that's a much easier question to answer if you already believe the premise.
I like to put mine in a coffee can buried in the yard.
Right?
It's almost like they get you to solve the wrong problem.
That's exactly what they're doing. And I think that's one of the reasons the scams can be so effective. We tend to think of deception as someone telling you a lie and you believing it. But sometimes the more important thing is that they've changed what you think you're deciding.
You're not deciding whether to hand over gold to a stranger. You're deciding whether to follow what you think is a legitimate security procedure.
Right? And that's why authority is so powerful. If someone says, I'm Joe and I need you to do this, you might question it. If somebody says, I'm calling from your bank's fraud department and I'm helping you to secure your account, suddenly the same interaction carries a completely different weight.
Which is why impersonating institutions is so effective.
Exactly. You're borrowing the credibility of the institution. And once you've accepted that authority, every subsequent interaction gets a little easier to follow.
Okay, but I need to know how this ends because we've just watched this woman lose $1.335 million in gold over the course of 2 months. And I'm sitting here thinking, at what point does somebody finally go, okay, this has gone off the rails?
Well, that's the strange part. The scam didn't end because the scammer suddenly made a mistake so obvious that she realized what was happening. It didn't end because she somehow woke up one morning and thought, you know what? Maybe the people telling me to buy gold and hand it to strangers aren't actually protecting my money.
Which would have been a reasonable thought.
Extremely reasonable. But no, the scammers came back and asked for another 100,000 in gold.
After she had already given them more than $1 million. Greedy.
Right? And at that time, something finally changed, and she contacted the FBI.
Oh, now.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where we finally get another adult in the room.
Right. The FBI worked with her on a controlled delivery. She was supposed to make the $100,000 gold delivery, but instead of giving the scammers the actual gold, the package was designed to make it look as though she had. She met one of the men outside a bank in Carlsbad. He then took the package and drove away. About 2 minutes later, he handed it off to another man who was then stopped by the California Highway Patrol.
I wonder how heavy that bag was.
And isn't that a clue? Like if you're meeting them outside the bank instead of inside the bank in an office?
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, but you take it outside and then they just run away and jump in a car. Like
that wasn't an alarm. Like how did you deliver this the rest of the time?
I still don't.
Again, where was the meeting place?
I still don't understand how this seemed right.
You just added Denny's holding over a suitcase full of gold bars.
Right.
Like, how does this work? All right, so they actually caught these people like in the middle of the crime this time, right?
They did. And as investigators recovered the package, along with the evidence connecting these two men to the scheme and the earlier gold deliveries.
Okay, I have to say, I really like that ending. Not because someone lost 1.335 whatever million dollars, right? But because the thing that finally broke the scam wasn't that she suddenly became better at like spotting deception. It was that she got outside the situation.
Exactly. And that's important because remember what the scammers have been doing from the beginning. They were controlling the information around her. They were telling her what happened, who they were, what she needed to do, and how to respond. But when she contacted the FBI, there was another source of information, a sane source, and another perspective. Another person saying, let's stop for a second and look at what's actually happening here.
She should be allowed to punch each one of them in the face really hard one time.
Yes.
That should be allowed.
Or hit them with the gold brick.
There you go. I like your moxie. Anyway, so, I mean, there's a pretty important lesson here because when you're inside the scam, you're trying to solve the problem the scammer created. And when somebody outside the situation looks at it, they can question whether, like, the problem is even real.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about this case. The question wasn't just, why did she fall for it? It was also, what finally gave her enough distance to question it? And in this case, it was another person, which is why we're going to keep coming back to that idea throughout this episode. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do isn't to trust your own ability to figure things out. It's to step outside the situation, and let someone else look at it with you.
And maybe, ideally, do that before the gold bars.
Yes, before the gold bars would be preferable.
But you do you, boo.
Right?
All right, reality check. Okay, let's do a reality check here because I think most of us would like to believe we'd stop the scam long before the gold, right?
Right.
So let's walk it backwards. You get the call saying your computer has been compromised. What do?
Hang up.
Okay, but let's say it sounded legitimate.
Still hang up.
They know your name.
Still hang up.
They know your address.
Definitely hang up.
They know the name of your bank.
Still hanging up.
They give you a phone number for the bank.
Again, definitely hanging up.
Okay, you're really committed to hanging up.
Because I'm not trying to solve a fraud investigation while the alleged fraud investigators are the ones who called me. I'm going to independently contact the information.
Hmm. And
I'm going to independently contact my bank.
Right? And that's the important piece. You're not necessarily deciding whether they're lying. You're removing yourself from the information environment.
Right. Because if they give you the phone number, the website, the email address, the person you're supposed to talk to, and the instructions for what you're supposed to do next, they're controlling the entire process. And
Smells like a load of bullshit.
Yes, you need to step outside of that.
Anybody could get a phone number, you know
Right?
what I mean? You can go online right now. Tick. All right, so you step outside of that, right? And then, like, tell somebody else what's happening. If something sounds suspicious, talk to your friends about it. Talk to your cousin, your pastor, the fucking guy at the gas station. I don't know, talk to somebody.
Right?
Somebody's gonna be like, that sounds suspicious.
Yeah.
Text, send us an email. We'll help you out.
Yes.
We'll be like, that sounds suspicious.
Right. Because one of the things scammers seem to understand very well is the outside perspective is incredibly powerful. If you're alone and someone tells you your account has been compromised and you need to do this immediately, you're processing their information.
If you say to somebody else, hey, this weird thing is happening, does it sound right to you? Suddenly you have another person look at it without any of the emotional pressure you're under, which is probably why scammers often say, don't tell anyone.
Exactly.
It's a huge red flag.
It's not an incidental part of the scam. The scammer is trying to control the flow of information.
So the first rule might be, if somebody is extremely invested in making sure you don't talk to anyone else, you should probably talk to everyone else.
Immediately. Call your mother, call your dentist, call the person that cuts your grass. Just get another human involved.
Yeah, pick one.
Yep. As she said, email us. We gotcha.
Whatever, we'll be like, trust me, I'm very good at this.
Yeah, having both of us been through identity theft and stuff, we're pretty good.
We've seen it happen live.
Yes.
All right, moving on. I think romance scams are where it gets even more complicated because now we're not talking about fear alone, we're talking about attachment. And I think this is one of those places where people are particularly judgmental because they look at the outside of the relationship and say, how could you possibly believe that?
Right? And I admit, this is a hard one for me to be like, you did what? Because why? Because all of these relationships are online relationships. So you've never actually met this person.
I saw a lady on Dr. Phil who swore to God she was in a relationship with Post Malone. And it was a scammer, obviously.
Right. So you don't know this person, you've never met them, and you're going to start buying things for them. Like,
right.
I do have a problem with that because there's a certain level of like, you did this to yourself. And I know that's not how we're supposed to be, but like,
they do.
You're not in a relationship if you've never met the person. I'm sorry.
It is essential. It is essential.
So the FBI documented a case involving a woman who met a man online who called himself Charlie. They developed...
Who picks that?
Right? Now get this though, it was a 2-year relationship online where they never met. And then he eventually told her he needed money to finish a construction project. And she sent him $30,000.
Wait, he waited 2 years to start this scam?
Oh, he was scamming her big time.
For 30 grand?
Right. And that's why I have to stop right there.
Like a lot of return on investment, honestly. 2 years is a long time.
Well, who knows how much they were actually communicating.
That's true.
You know, if they live on opposite sides of the world, time zones, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, because I got to stop. Again, there's no way I'm sending anyone I'm dating $30,000, let alone somebody I've never met.
Right?
And to do, like, complete a development project, I want part of the investment in that then. If I'm giving you money, I want part of the project ownership. Like, there's got to be documents signed.
Right, maybe I should go see this project.
Right?
And meet this person.
Right?
Neither of us would give somebody $30 for some dumb shit like that. So.
Fair. And of course, then he told her he'd repay it within 24 to 48 hours. He didn't. Shocker.
Well, because if he had that money...
Exactly. If you were going to get that money in 2 days, you wouldn't need to ask for it. You could wait those 2 days.
Mm-hmm. No bank in the world is not going to wait 2 days for some shit.
Right. And I mean, till you wire money and all that's going to be more than 2 days anyhow. So again, that would be my first thing. Why do you need money for 2 days if you're going to get the $30,000 in 2 days?
These are all the good questions. That's what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. Oh, and then there were more requests though, right? So she continued believing his explanations. Like I said, for 2 years, she lost, what did it say? Almost $2 million.
$2 million.
$2 million.
2 years is a long time. And again, I have questions. Like, when you're not paid back the first time.
Why do you keep sending large amounts of money? I mean, your first instincts are definitely going to be like, how could she not see this? But I think we have to look at what the brain is actually being asked to accept.
Because if you believe someone you're falling in love with is real,
Right, that's the first
okay, so that's the first red flag. You have not met this person. And then you encounter evidence that suggests maybe they're not who they say they are. You're not just dealing with whether or not to send a payment. You're deciding if the relationship itself is real, which you should decide before you send the payment.
Yeah, but it's much more painful to ask yourself like that deep question, you know what I mean?
Right.
And these people are lonely, they're sad. And those fucking sicko assholes prey on
Yes.
that. They
Yes.
prey on like the widows and stuff like that.
And to be clear, even though we have some questions with the people that did these things, are annoyance and anger is directed to the criminals and the scammers, not the actual people.
But for real, you guys, just talk to a friend when something seems weird.
Yeah, because I can guarantee you, if this woman was telling her friends about this 2-year relationship with a guy she hasn't met and she's sending him over $2 million, somewhere along the line, the friend would have been like,
Excuse me, ma'am. What? What are you doing?
we're going to go have a talk with your bank. And so, yeah, trust your girlfriends. That's what they're there for.
All right. So, exactly. So, if you accept that you've been like scammed, right? You're also accepting that the person you thought really cared about you doesn't exist in the way you thought they did. That's an enormous emotional loss on top of like the potential financial
Right.
loss, you know? And suddenly, all these weird things that like happen in the relationship can be explained away.
Right? He didn't call because he was traveling. He needed money because something went wrong. He couldn't pay you back because there was another problem. He's not avoiding you. He's busy. He's not lying. There's always an explanation.
Always an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, this guy had more financial emergencies than a small country, honestly.
Sure.
But I can understand how the brain keeps looking for explanations and then that explanation, it preserves the relationship, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that confirmation bias. Once we're invested emotionally in a conclusion, information that supports that conclusion feels far more persuasive and informative, and information that threatens it can become something we explain away.
And that's why I don't think it's obviously a scam is always the helpful thing to say to somebody involved in those kind of relationships.
I agree, but you can think it, and you should help them get out of it.
Right. But like, don't be a dick about it.
Exactly.
Somebody else is clearly already being a dick.
Right, because from their perspective, you're not just telling them they made a bad financial decision. You're telling them that their feelings are misplaced, their judgment is wrong, and the person they care about isn't real. Which, again, they need to hear, but
Gently.
yes, there's a way to do it.
Right. I mean, it's probably not going to make them say, "Oh my gosh, thank you. You completely changed my mind."
Right? Probably not.
Yeah, they're probably going to be pissed at you actually for a while.
Yeah. Yep. Because it's making the shame even harder. Because once someone realizes they may have been manipulated, and admitting it to another person can be humiliating.
And if the scammer has already told them not to tell anyone, you've got this like awful combination of isolation and embarrassment, which is exactly what those little fucking scammers want.
Right. Or anyone. If you're in a relationship with someone and they tell you you can't talk to people,
Suspicious.
yes, get out.
I couldn't get a red flag big enough to write right now.
Exactly. And that's something that we want people to take away from this episode. A scam victim doesn't necessarily need another person saying, "How could you be so stupid?" They need another person who can say, "Okay, let's figure out what's happening and what we can do about it."
Mm-hmm. Now, some scams are much easier to laugh at. Fake lottery scams are one of them. Because there's something inherently ridiculous about receiving a message that says, "Congratulations, you won $1 million." And then the next sentence is, "Please send us money."
Right?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've won $5 million.
Amazing.
Just send us $400 to release it.
No,
Okay, 800?
that's not how this works.
Exactly. But so the interesting thing is people do sometimes send those fees though, and sometimes they send more than one.
Which brings us to one of the most annoying things our brains do: sunk cost. Once you've already put enough money into something, walking away can feel like admitting that the money is gone.
I feel like I've been guilty of that.
Oh, I'm sure I have.
So let's say you pay $400 because you believe you're about to receive $1 million. And then they come back and say, here's another $800 processing fee. I mean, your rational response should be eat a dick.
Right.
Right. Mhm.
But psychologically, there's another voice saying, wait, if I don't pay the 800, I definitely lose the 400 I already paid.
Which is fascinating because you're trying to prevent loss by making another loss.
Exactly. Your brain has somehow turned into, I should stop losing money, into, I should give them more money.
The human brain is not great at accounting.
No, it's really not.
And this is where scammers can take advantage of something called escalation of commitment. Because once you made a decision, especially a decision that costs you something, you're more motivated to really justify it.
Because admitting I made a mistake feels terrible. So instead of walking away, you look for a way to make the original decision work,
Maybe this next payment will fix it.
right? That's the sentence where a lot of scams get really dangerous because now the person isn't necessarily pursuing the original promise, they're pursuing recovery.
But I'm not stupid. Okay, let's talk about intelligence because I think this is where a lot of people listening are going, fine, but I'm not going to buy gold because somebody on a fucking phone told me to.
And you may be right, and hopefully you're right. Don't do that. There are cognitive skills that do help people identify deception. Research has found associations between things like cognitive reflection and the better ability to distinguish legitimate messages from fraudulent ones.
So we're not going to tell you that intelligence doesn't matter. It does.
But it's not armor, because you can be intelligent and still be afraid. You can be intelligent and still be lonely. You can be intelligent and still be exhausted, which is us on a daily basis. You can be intelligent and still be overconfident.
I've been both intelligent and stupid at the same time, pretty much all the time. That's my standard state.
Right?
I contain multitudes.
Yes.
Anyway, so intelligence might be one of the most interesting variables here and one of the most interesting vulnerabilities.
If your belief is, I'm too smart to fall for a scam, you've already created a blind spot. Because now you might be less likely to ask yourself whether you're being manipulated because you're assuming you've already passed the test.
It's like saying, I am a very good driver. I don't need to wear a seatbelt.
Exactly. Being good at something doesn't eliminate the possibility that something unexpected happens.
And there's another thing I think that gets overlooked. People don't make decisions in a vacuum. I think we've said that before.
Right.
I mean, if I'm sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and somebody shows me an email and says, is this suspicious? I have time. I can look at it. I can search the company. I can call somebody. I can think about it.
But if somebody had just told me my bank account is being emptied right now, I have 5 minutes to fix it, and they're talking rapidly, and they're telling me I could be arrested, and they're telling me not to call anyone, that creates a completely different cognitive environment.
So the question isn't really, are you like smart enough to recognize a scam? Is can you create enough distance from the situation to use the judgment you normally would have?
And that's a much better question. And this brings us to the part that I think is most fascinating. Why do people sometimes keep paying after they start realizing something's wrong? Because we can understand the first payment. Maybe you believe the story,
But what about payment number 4 or payment number 10?
right? The moment where you're sitting there thinking, this is getting weird. Why didn't you stop?
I think because then like stopping has a cost too, right?
Exactly. And it's not just financial, although there is the money you've already lost, but there's also time and emotion that you've already invested.
There's the embarrassment.
Yep.
There's a possibility that you've told other people about this and now you have to like look them in their faces and admit you are wrong.
Especially if they have told you you were wrong somewhere along the way.
Right. Now you got to be like, so
Yep.
anyway.
And then there's that hope that you're one step away from getting everything back.
Yeah. And that last one is brutal. Because if someone says, you've already lost $10,000, but we can recover it if you pay another 5,000. You're not necessarily hearing, give us 5,000. You're hearing, you can fix this.
Exactly. And that's why recovery scams are such an ugly extension of the original scam. The person has already been hurt, and now someone comes along offering a way out.
Which sounds like the perfect solution to the problem the scam created.
Right? And psychologically, that's incredibly powerful because one of the hardest things for a person to do is say, I made a mistake and the money is gone. That's final. But I made a mistake, and if I just do this one more thing, I can fix it. That's hopeful.
Even if that one more thing is completely insane.
Exactly. That's why I think we need to stop. That's why I think we need to stop imagining scam victims as people who simply believe lies.
Sometimes there are people who are desperately trying to make a bad situation turn out okay, which is something most of us have done in some form.
Absolutely. We've all made bad decisions and then spent way too much time trying to prove to ourselves that it really wasn't a bad decision.
The difference is most of us aren't dealing with somebody whose entire job it is to keep us from like admitting that to ourselves.
Absolutely. So if we take a step back, all of these scams look different, but the psychological structure starts to look surprisingly similar.
Right. There's usually some combination of fear, urgency, authority, hope, attachment, and greed. But the really important thing is what happens after that.
The scammer gives you a problem, then gives you a solution. Then the solution requires a decision. Then the next step requires another decision. And because you've already accepted the earlier premise, the next decision doesn't feel as strange as it would at the beginning.
So the scammer doesn't need you to believe the entire story. They just need you to believe the next thing. And then once you've acted on it, you've given yourself another reason to keep on believing.
Yep, it's a trap. And I think that's why so many scams can be difficult to explain after the fact. We look at the final decision and say, how could anybody do that? But the person didn't experience the final decision in isolation. They experienced 100 tiny decisions that gradually moved them there.
So what do we actually do with all this? Because I don't want everybody listening to become like so suspicious that we stop answering our phones and start assuming every email is an international conspiracy.
Although, honestly, some of us could probably benefit from answering fewer phone calls.
That's fair. But the goal isn't to become impossible to scam. I don't think that's realistic. The goal is to build some like friction between requests and decisions.
If somebody tells you something is urgent, slow down. If they tell you not to tell somebody, definitely tell somebody.
Tell everybody.
Yep. If they give you a number to call, don't use it. Find the legitimate number for that organization yourself.
And if you're being asked to make financial decisions while you're scared, angry, excited, embarrassed, overwhelmed, all this stuff, it's probably the worst possible time to make that decision because your brain is trying to solve the emergency.
And remember, if your bank account has been hacked, which has happened to both of us on multiple occasions, I assure you, at no point did my bank call me and say, you have 5 minutes to do something.
Nope.
Sometimes they would call me and be like, hey, did you really just spend $500 in a completely different state buying fur? And I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't. They're like, okay, you know what? We're just going to take that off your account and we're going to send you a brand new credit card. And,
right, that's how that's handled.
Right. So I don't know of any legitimate situation where a legitimate finance place came and said, you have 5 minutes to do something.
No, because seriously, even when you do report like stuff like that, it still takes them a while to do their investigation and everything. You know what I mean? Like,
and
there's no urgency, I assure you.
And as far as computers, there's no system out there monitoring your computer. So if somebody calls and says your computer has a problem,
and now your bank account is hacked,
right? Or your computer has a problem and somehow I need $1 million in gold to like.
Also, if I got $1.3335 million, somebody says your computer is hacked, why don't you hang up and get like a computer tech person in there?
Exactly.
You have the money.
Yeah. Just stay sus.
Stay sus.
Yeah. And you want to give yourself enough distance to ask those really boring questions. Who is this? How do I know they're who they say they are? Can I verify any of this independently? What happens if I do nothing for an hour? What happens if I talk to somebody else first? Oh, and that's the other thing. Your bank is never going to tell you not to talk to anybody about this.
Right?
They're going to tell you got to go to the FCC and file a fraud identity theft thing, and you're going to call your credit unions, and they're telling you to tell everybody.
All your stuff. No.
Right? Yeah, they are telling you to tell everybody this happened.
Buy gold.
Right?
You know who tells you that? Your crazy uncle.
Right.
Anyway, so maybe that's like the most important question is that why does this person desperately need me to do this right now?
Exactly. Because sometimes the answer is legitimate, maybe, very rarely. And sometimes there's a marching band of red flags outside your house.
Sorry, I would love a marching band outside my house. You know how we do around here.
Yeah, good old second line.
Oh, they got merch.
Yes. And what's really uncomfortable lesson here, you don't have to be stupid to get scammed. You don't have to be old or naive. You just have to be human.
Because fear makes us act differently. Hope makes us act differently. Love makes us act differently. Urgency really makes us act differently. And shame can make us keep going along after we normally would stop.
So maybe the goal isn't to become the person who can never be fooled. Maybe the goal is to know yourself well enough to recognize when you're in a state that you're especially vulnerable to being manipulated.
Then give yourself a minute.
Hang up. Call somebody.
Verify it yourself.
And for the love of God, do not buy gold bars for strangers.
I mean, unless you were already planning to buy gold bars.
Miranda.
I'm just saying, we shouldn't judge the gold bar hobby.
That's not what we're talking about.
Oh, fine.
You don't have to be smarter than the scammer. You just have to give yourself enough time to question the next decision.
Which is why I think our original question, how did they fall for that, has a slightly different answer now.
Yeah. It's not like they looked at something so completely ridiculous and thought, sure, why not? It's that somebody found the exact combination of circumstances that made a ridiculous thing feel reasonable.
Which is actually much creepier.
Much creepier. Because it means the thing protecting you isn't a magic level of intelligence where you're permanently immune to being manipulated. It's knowing when somebody is trying to rush you, isolate you, scare you or flatter you, or make you emotionally invested in an outcome.
And recognizing that your own brain might be helping them.
Exactly. So maybe the next time something feels urgent and somebody is telling you, don't tell anyone, just trust me, you don't need to figure out whether they're a criminal mastermind. You can stop, hang up.
Oh, you love hanging up. It's your favorite.
I do. Well, that's assuming you even answer the phone, which is probably not going to happen.
Maybe you thought it was your doctor or something, you know?
Yeah.
So, although I'm still fascinated the gold bars were apparently a solution to a computer virus.
That is my favorite part.
And honestly, that may be the most seriously sus thing about the entire story.
Not the scam, not the money, not even the 11-hour phone call.
It's the fact that somebody somewhere heard your computer has been hacked and eventually arrived at, clearly, I need gold.
And then the person was willing to take the gold, of course.
Exactly.
Humanity remains undefeated in questionable decision-making.
And that is seriously sus.
Yeah. And on that note, that's all for this episode of Seriously Sus.
If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you're listening, and send it to somebody you've ever said, I would never fall for that scam.
Especially if they say it with a lot of confidence or knows where to buy gold.
Right? Because apparently that's exactly how you end up on an 11-hour phone call.
We'll be back next week with another strange corner of human behavior that probably deserves a little more side-eye.
Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay seriously sus.
Thanks for hanging out with us for another episode of Seriously Sus, the podcast that delivers shadiness with a side-eye with hosts Miranda and Nanette. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion about how people actually fall for scams and why it's not nearly as simple as being gullible or not paying attention.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. Have you ever encountered a scam that was so convincing, so bizarre, or so ridiculously elaborate that you almost couldn't believe it was real? Or have you ever caught yourself making a decision and then, like, in hindsight, thought, okay, what the hell was I thinking? Send us your experiences, your opinions, your side eye, and your suggestions for the future episodes. You can reach out through our website or send us an email at seriouslysuspodcast@gmail.com or DM us.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to help support the show. Like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, leave a comment, push all the buttons, share it with a friend, recommend us to somebody.
And if you didn't like today's episode, like, I don't know, rage comment. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, rate, comment, hit the dislike button. It's all good.
Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical. Slow down when someone tells you you have to act right now. And maybe before you buy the gold bars.
Talk to somebody first.
And as always, stay seriously sus. Outro music, la 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 la. Outro music, lost by gold. And where do you even buy it?